times when the job has to get done, but more often than not, you don't have the essentials to get it done. This results in improvising and using what's available to make things work, despite it being not the right thing to do. This is Improvised Tools.
What are improvised tools?
Well, I can give you guys an example. Crescent hammers and hammer wrenches. By what I mean by crescent hammers is you got a job where that's the only thing you have available, like a crescent wrench, and you got that one stubborn individual who just refuses to go back to this toolbox or tool crib or tool bag, whatever the case may be. So it's like, I'm gonna just use this, use the closed end as a hammer. Animal.
I've used a Ford wrench in that fashion before. Ford wrench with a brass punch, trying to take out a roll pin on a landing gear on a Phenom 300 before.
I mean, I've used a screwdriver as a punch before.
Yeah, a punch, a chisel, a pry bar.
Yeah. Now the crazy part is when you start seeing said wrench or screwdriver flex because you're not using it for its intended purpose.
Yeah, when you take like a snap-on one and you see it start bending, you're like, oh, I might be putting this one under a little too much load.
Right. I've done most of this mostly on helicopters where some of the rotated components, like it's just too tight a space to put a proper tool for it. Like you would normally use like a socket and a torque breaker bar for it, but it just won't fit that fashion. So you get like two wrenches and kind of do like a fulcrum method where you have one closed end like pushing on the open end and just kind of pry it out that way.
Oh, you're talking about putting the wrenches together to create a longer leverage arm.
Yeah. So like that's the only way, that's the best way it will fit, and that's the most efficient way besides trying to fisty fuck a socket into that space. But you can tell when you're using the wrong sized wrenches as the fulcrum effect, because you can see the other one just straight flexing and starting to kind of form a bend where it's doing the fulcrum. Like, it's probably not a good idea.
Or the open end of the wrench is splaying out a little bit. Yeah. It's flexing out. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that. I've taken, we've all modified tools, right? So I have like a 1/4 inch wrench and I've taken it to a grinder and I've shaved it down real thin so I can use it on the bolts that hold the engine casings together, the engine housings together.
Right.
Also all those titanium, 1/4 inch 12-point bits. And so yeah, I've shaved that down just to be able to fit it, no problem. I think probably I've seen people take like pieces of pipe that they found and weld them to a socket to create a longer arm of leverage and try to break loose a nut or a bolt or whatever. For me, the thing that I've done that was the wrong tool for the job is we had a socket set and I was out on the road somewhere and it was an oversized, a large socket set. I'm talking like the inch and 1.25 inch, 1.125 inch, 2 inch sockets. And we were doing a tire change on, I think it was a Global 5000. And anyways, we didn't have the right socket size for that axle nut. We had an oversized one. One was either too small or it was way too big. So we had to, we took some coins that we had in our pockets.
Yeah.
And we taped them together. And then that filled up the gap on the one side. So we put the socket on there and then that filled up the one side between the socket and the nut, the axle nut. And then, we used a big pry bar and just cranked that thing off there. And we were able to change it. And we were able to even actually be able to properly torque that axle nut with those coins in there. So that's probably the most wrong tool that I've used before.
Nah, I've done something similar but it's in the opposite, where we take the too small one and we kind of just smash it in there to the nut. Like it's just undersized by a little bit, so we kind of just get like a hammer or a rubber mallet and just kind of fit it up in there.
Yeah, finesse it on. I've also taken a Dremel in that same scenario and ground out part of the socket as well to make it fit.
No, I've seen someone try to be smart about it. They'll put like Allen wrenches or Allen keys into the space to kind of give it that little extra grab. But that's assuming you have the Allen keys to do as such. Now, a lot of the stuff as far as using tools incorrectly is obviously you would want to use the right ones, but either A, they're not available, B, they don't exist, or C, they just, for whatever reason or another, it's just not around or an option for you to have, right? Like, well, I need this tool to do this. Okay, cool, but this job needs to happen like 30 minutes ago. Like, well, fuck.
Yeah, we got a revenue flight coming. We got a high priority mission coming. So, and then they throw you that do what it takes. But we mean that with the open ended of do what it takes. So hopefully it goes well. But if it goes wrong, I get to still hang you for using the wrong tools.
Yep. Yeah. Isn't that like? Can you just waive this or cancel it? Well, like, nope. The show must go on.
Yeah,
must
we don't
happen.
have any other aircraft that this one can use. No, they want to use this one because it's the newest one. Yeah, of course they want. Everybody wants to use the newest one, which is why it's racking up the hours like it is. Which is why we're already doing such and such maintenance on it. You know,
right? Now, but aside from tools, how many times have any of you ever used improper equipment to do a job? You know, like using a crane or a strap or other type of devices that it's not meant to do that kind of job.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like, I can hear the angry voices crying out like, I know what you mean.
Some people might be doing that right now while listening to this.
as they're using a forklift to put on a propeller, you know, like
going, wow, this is super relatable.
Now, I actually have seen a picture of this where someone used a forklift to take off and put on a propeller. I forget what kind of plane, but like, I'm just looking at it like, that doesn't look right. That probably shouldn't be happening. You know, imagine like two forks and two cargo straps just kind of keeping a propeller like from wiggling back and forth as they're trying to fit it onto its pinion.
So I know in one of the experiences that I've done, we've used a strap that was rated for 5,000 pounds, and we wrap it twice around the forks of a forklift, and then we hook it to the CG fixture of the aircraft that weighs more than double what the strap is rated for, and then lift the whole aircraft into the air.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
And if anything, we proved with some science that the strap was rated for more than what it says it was, which I think is how most things are designed, because they know that people like us are going to test it.
Generally, it's rated like 5-1 or 10-1, so that the force pulling on it is accounted for, or an earthquake.
Well, there we go.
Or some jagaloons who are doing it a half-assed way.
Or, you know, if you're trying to lift something that's twice as heavy as it's supposed to be lifting.
Right. So I did a job. This was in Darwin, Australia, where we had to remove the transmission of one of our helicopters, but we didn't have a crane or a hanger crane that was tall enough to lift it out. Like the crane itself at max height was about 2 feet away from the minimum clearance needed to lift it out. So like it was impossible to do it. So we had to call the fire department or some version of a fire department, and they had to bring a cherry picker over. And the cherry picker itself, when it's fully raised, was barely enough to get 3 feet of clearance from the plane itself, from the end of the hook. So we had to basically break apart the transmission in pieces. So like the transmission itself was made up of like 5 different parts, I would say, or cases. So in order to get the whole thing out, we had to unbolt each case to have it come off and come out to give it enough clearance. And the whole time we're like, this probably shouldn't be done. Like, we shouldn't be doing this, because
like, it's one of the things that you're only supposed to take these apart at a depot level.
Yeah,
at the depot level, like in a environmentally controlled facility with and they have specialized tools to do those certain things.
Right. Yeah. Or so say we pop these cases open. What's the likelihood of we're gonna be able to get the seals for these? Because
that's true too. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like one of the seals for it was like this hula hoop sized O-ring, like a no bullshit hula hoop. And if we pinch this or if we ripped it or whatever, the chances of our getting another one is probably like 3-4 months out. So it was one of those roll the dice, like this has to be done perfectly without a hitch, best of weather conditions, so we don't fuck it up. And all this we had to do outside because there wasn't a hanger tall enough to have the cherry picker in there to have it at the height we needed and to get things off the plane. It was so fucking sketch the whole time. We're like, ooh, biting fingernails the whole time.
Oh man, I've seen one before, like doing an engine removal. The support equipment we had on site to use it. I can't remember whatever airfield we were at. I think it might have been in Louisville. I can't remember though for sure. But the forklift extended height-wise only tall enough to be able to get like it hooked up to the engine, but you couldn't lift it any higher to, like on this particular aircraft, you had to like lift it up and out of like the trusses to get it off, but it couldn't go any higher. Like, just high enough that we could get the forklift on it. So then we had to go and find a nose jack somewhere and basically jack the nose up off the ground. So we had to drop the tail out from underneath of the engine, basically moving the whole aircraft around the engine, just enough that we could back straight up with the engine and get it out of the way and then drop the nose back down. And then same thing, vice versa on the install, had to lift the nose back up. So like fortunate for it, we were smart enough to take some measurements and know, like, oh man, we're gonna have to do this when we put it back together. So here's how high we had to lift it to get the engine in. Here's all these different things, but yeah, definitely not the right piece of equipment. When you have to move the aircraft around the engine, that's an issue.
Yeah, and notice like it's always something that has to do with lifting. That's probably like the most sketchy of things of having to have to do either lifting things or something that deals with electricity. I can't even tell you guys like how much sketchy shit I've done with electricity. And it's probably shouldn't have been doing it. Like, I mean, 110 volts, okay, that's bad. 240 volts, okay, that's bad. But 240 amps? No.
Yeah.
No. That's a hard no for me, friend. Like, unless you got me in a full fucking Chernobyl suit made out of rubber or some kind of insulation where, like, I can get zapped by lightning and I won't feel it, then maybe. But other than that, that's a hard no. No.
It's crazy.
All you electricians out there, man, like, you're probably like, oh, it's fine as long as ground and electrical bonding and all that shit. Like, I don't care.
Yeah, that's a super high risk.
Yeah, I've got a story on that, in terms of just modified things. We had a lighting guy put the wrong end of his L2130, which is 3 circuits of power. It's a 5-pin cable. He put the male end up in the air to power his lights. So now he has a female end down on the ground. So how are we supposed to plug a female end into essentially a wall socket of sorts? Well, you can't. Female and female don't mesh in terms of electricity and connectors. So we had to fabricate a male end. So now it is a male to male electrical cable. So now you plug that into the wall. If you bring down that truss at the end of the night and you forget to turn that off and somebody grabs the end that's up in the air and touches that cable and it's still powered, you are gonna hurt this person or kill them.
Zap. Zap. Reset his freaking nervous system and everything.
You just tape the shit out of it. This is the first thing to go off at the end of the night. You just got to prepare everybody for that. But that's luckily not a common thing that is done for good reason. But something to watch out for.
Yeah. And then that goes into well, this broke or we did it. We pulled the noops, but the show has to go on. So figure it out, guy. Like, oh, son of a bitch.
Or how about sheared bolts and you have no replacement bolts and it's for a panel and or screws or whatever's holding the panel, but the hardware, you have sheared hardware and no replacements. It's the middle of the night and it's got a high value flight to do in the morning. Nothing can hinder it. Yakety yak, and you've seen the panel held on with like RTV or BHAF sealant.
So you basically like just you're gonna sandwich fillet seal the
Like
panel.
the sheared heads of the hardware were RTV'd in the holes, so it looks like it was there. But then RTV was applied around the edges of the panel and then pressed into place. And then when you go to take the panel off, and you're like, why are these sealed? Why, like some wet tanks or whatever will have sealed hardware, right?
Yeah.
But this was not the case, and I'm like, why are these sealed? And you pop it out, and then just the head comes off, and you're like, oh, I see what they did.
Right. No, I've done some stuff like that where it wasn't anything fancy. It was just flash breaker tape. Just tape, basically like the 60s version of just duct tape everything. Like just get like layers and layers of flash breaker tape / duct tape onto this panel or onto this flight control surface just long enough for it to do what it needs to do for however long, and then we can tear it apart and fix it once it comes down.
Or how about, and you probably see this maybe in general aviation more than others, but how about like a pair of pliers doing the job of something else? So say, you remember like in an old beater car that you might have had and had to roll up and down with, the manual window cranks.
Yeah.
The crank breaks off, so you put a pair of vice grips on it and you turn that to get up and down. So same thing like on support equipment, if something breaks, so you use the cable, you use pliers on the end of the cable that's sheared, and you're pulling on the pliers as like the throttle cable. You ever done that? Yeah, that's the incorrect usage of tools.
I feel like there was something like that for a similar situation with parts, especially for general aviation stuff. Like, oh, this brake cable or this clutch cable broke, so like we have like this makeshift stick kite thing to kind of be like the substitute until we get something else. I'm like, oh, so like to gauge your flaps, you need to pull this string, and then to do anything with the landing gear, you gotta pump this handle. Like, what the fuck? It's like some weird, like, I know my car kind of mentality.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Like, I can't turn the heater on and have my headlights on at the same time type thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like one of those. It's either or. If I'm driving at night, I'm going to freeze.
Or like it's like you go to use the windshield wipers and it's either doing the windshield wipers or it honks your horn. Like, it's one or the other. Something's going to happen.
I'm trying to think of some other instances where we might have used or modified a tool for an incorrect use. I mean, I know of like shave down screwdrivers, like Phillips screwdrivers to fit certain applications. Like you have the I'm just going to say the Nazi bits because that's what I was told they are. But those fasteners that are they look like Phillips, but they're a little offset.
Yeah.
From one another. That a lot of aircraft have on it. I've had to modify like a regular Phillips because I didn't have the actual correct bit to fit that. So I always carried a Dremel with me. Just Dremel with me. Felt like, well, yeah, that or like I've modified the hardware, right? Where I'm like, I don't have the right tool to get this out, but I can modify the head of it to fit what I do have to get it out. And then I'll have to either one, find the correct tool, or two, figure out a way to replace this tool, but at least I can get the hardware out and continue on with the job and figure that part out later. I don't know. Right.
Yeah. And a lot of these tools or special equipment, like some of that shit is just not available where you're at. Like say like you're in a country where everything's metric. You're almost never going to find anything that's imperial measurement and vice versa. Like, why the fuck will we carry this? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those, like, again, going back to like taking the socket and kind of smashing it in, like this will fit, or coming out with ways to kind of be universal. Now some of these tools or equipment, like it ends up becoming a thing, right? Like, oh, that was a good idea. We should make this standard issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and then you'll see like one like a maintenance package or a tool set. And one of it is like this giant seat pole looking thing. Like, what the fuck is this for?
Yeah, it's actually a tool you can check out from the tool crib. And you're like, I don't even know why this is in here. What the hell is this for?
Right.
And it was used like once or twice over the course of a decade. So it's not used a lot, but whenever it's needed, it's like, oh, thank God we have this thing.
Right.
I know another instance for me is like changing out we were on a Falcon 2000 up in Canada, and we were changing a AGB or accessory gearbox seal out. Yep. They have these like magnetic seals, but we got the part out of the way, and then we're like, oh man, we don't have the correct tools. We figured out to because they're those certain seals, they kind of, you press them in to place. So some seals, they just pop in and out, not, real easy. These ones were kind of pressed though, because it was an older model Falcon. And so we're like, oh, we don't have, and there's only 2 tools in the world. One was in New Orleans at the time, and the other one was in Paris. Mm-hmm. So they just ship these tools around the world as they need. Well, we weren't going to get it in a timely fashion. So like I had some like wood screws. So I drilled into the seals and then put the screws in and then wrapped safety wire around each screw and then tied those 2 ends together and braided it up. And then I was using pliers and like almost like a slide hammer, like the world's shittiest slide hammer.
Yeah.
And trying to pop that seal out, and that didn't freaking work. And then I had a pair of relay pliers, and I was trying to reach in and around that. And like those will work surprisingly more often than not on a lot of AGB seals. But on this ones, I was like in there, I was like, come on, like squeezing it, like didn't work. Ultimately, we end up having to wait for the tool, right? The proper tool for the job. What a novel concept, but we end up having to wait several days to get the one from New Orleans. But just trying again to do using the wrong tools for the job, and trying to be crafty with it, and it didn't work out that time. But then we've had other times where like was down in Orlando, and we had some hydraulic pressure issues, and we were talking to the OEM rep on the phone, and he's like, well, you can build we're going through the manual. It's like, well, you can build these pressure tests. We have it like our OEM facilities that, and you plug it in here and plug it in there, and then crank the motor up and then go out and manually read on a gauge, right? And we're like, well, we don't have any of that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, well, our stuff's scattered around the globe too, so good luck. I'm like, great. So we go to Home Depot and we find some gauges, and we run to like Napa. We go to Home Depot. We go to like what are those like where you go and get welding gas? One of those facilities,
Yeah.
And buy some like tubing from them, and buy some hoses and clamps, and we got and gauges and a collage of stuff from numerous stores. And we're like, okay, well, let's see what we can do and put it together. And you're like, what are these lines rated for? Oh, they're rated for 500 PSI. Cool. We're going to be cranking about 1,000. So I hope it holds. You know what I mean? And And sure enough, we're like, and so you're going out there and you're like, and I was like, man, if we're going to be doing this. So we end up buying a welder's mask from that one welding place. And then it's like to go out to read the gauges. And so you're wearing the welding mask as you're approaching the area while engines are running and everything to read the gauge and see what kind of pressure you're actually kicking out of the pump or whatever, and just hoping that shit don't explode in your face. But yeah, that was probably one of the most sketch things, and again, improper tool for the job. And that time it worked out, got lucky, but like goes back to what we were saying earlier, things are obviously rated for more than they say.
Right.
And thank God, because dumbasses like me would have probably died off a long time ago. Darwinism would have taken me.
Right. But I guess those Frankenstein action of tools where like it has to get done. It just has to. Like there's no way we're canceling this event. There's no way we're gonna cancel this flight. Whatever the case may be, where this must happen. Has to. And then it doesn't matter like how much you vent on the side of safety. Like this is probably not something we should be doing. You always get that individual who just like has to be right, or just has to have the final button push. Like, no, this will be it. I'm like, well, fuck. All right. Science. Better make sure my life insurance is up to date, because we're going to be doing some real crazy shit.
Yeah. But those are also the jobs where you make the name for yourself, right?
Yes.
Those are the jobs where you hear about, like when you're walking the thing, like, oh, so-and-so, you definitely want to follow them around and shadow them, because, you're going to learn a lot and you're going to do that. But those are the same guys who, if one wrong thing had happened, they probably wouldn't be around, but they've made a name for themselves by making the impossible be possible.
Right. Or like you'll Frankenstein something together and it ends up being something that's worth a shit, like pretty good, like seal pullers or seal presses even.
Yep.
Like, this is a fucking great idea. We should make these, right? And then you eventually run into an individual who knows how to like aftermarket this shit, or like finely tune or finely weld some stuff. What used to be just Mod Podge of Home Depot parts is now like a one piece 3D print or some shit.
Yeah, well, it's like they'll have the machine shop, right, who has CNC machines and mills, and so they'll take what the collage of stuff that you put together and made work, and then they'll make a legitimate tool, but with materials rated for those PSIs and whatever else, and then that becomes a new item in the tool crib, right, that you can check out anytime you need. And they'll make a couple of them, so you got one for the road, one for home, and everything else.
And they'll sell it.
Those are pretty cool.
And they'll sell it back to you like 6 times the price it took you to Mod Podge it from Home Depot.
Yeah, or it was your idea, but the company's like, "Hey, thanks for the idea," and you get nothing out of it.
Right. Like,
just a thanks. Thanks for helping us out. You get to keep your job another day.
Yeah. And I honestly, man, like that's the worst part I hate about having to improvise things like that. It's you're jeopardizing your safety for the sake of their achievement. If that makes any sort of sense, if you guys can relate to that, because like let me be the one to change a light bulb on a metal ladder while being drenched in rainwater. But by all means, let's have your light show, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, but I also think for a lot of us, especially in the aviation field, it sucks while we're going through it. But when you look back at it, you're like, I kind of like that challenge. I kind of, okay, here's the task. We don't have this stuff. Make it work. And I think that's why most of us probably stay in this field, is because you run into those types of challenges more often than not. So
right.
It's a little brain power that you have to sometimes, or at least for me, I have to really deep dive for it.
Right. Or you get stuff like the book can only mention so much, or manuals can only mention so much. So you'll run into situations more times than you would think where you would have to kind of be creative with how you fix it, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, some of the craziest fixes or greatest fixes we've ever seen were of the creative type. Like I would have never, like you look at some of them, you're like, I would have never even thought of that.
Right.
You know, but it just goes to show you some of the ingenuity that people out there have.
Right. Like slide hammers, man. I swear, before having to pull my first seal, I've never seen a slide hammer. And I always said, like, wouldn't it be fucking awesome if we had something that can kind of like hammer something out in the opposite direction? And then lo and behold, here's a slide hammer. Like, son of a bitch.
Yep.
How about that?
Pulling seals, pulling pins, God, I think I've even pulled, like I've used it to pull. Oh, we had a filter issue on a jet a number of years ago, and like the filter, I guess it was a bad batch of something, but the filters end up welding themselves. Like an oil filter, they end up welding themselves into place somehow. Like the seals that they used internal on those filters weren't actually rated for the temperatures that they were reaching, so the seals were kind of melting out, and then the metal was welding itself to the other. But you wouldn't be able to pull those filters off by hand. So again, like rigged it up to where we could fit a slide hammer on the back of the filter and just bang it off.
Right.
And
I think
wrong tool for the job, but it worked.
Right. I think also with electricity or avionics equipment, like a lot of their tools are starting to be more and more catered to that field of expertise. Because maybe it was the tool set that I had, but I never, up to a certain point, I didn't have pliers that stripped and crimped and the same tool. You know what I mean? Like, okay. I mean, I'll do it anyway. Like, I'll get needle nose pliers up here. I'll use like the cutting end to kind of strip it. Then I'll use the flat needle nose end to crimp it. But nowadays, you get ones that do both. Like, insert end here, strip. Insert end here, crimp. Son of a bitch. It's fucking amazing. I mean, the stupidest shit, you know, like.
Well, that goes back to the like people doing the job for millennia and saying there has to be an easier, faster way to do this, right?
Right.
And one tool that can do two. Plus, it's also money making, right? So
true.
That's how tool manufacturers stay in business.
Right.
Hey, here's a tool that we've had around for 150 years, but this time it's chrome plated. Buy now.
By God.
But now it comes in a color to match the color of your toolbox. Ooh.
Or do you remember ratchet wrenches where like you would have one end that loosens and you have to flip it over and do it to tighten it?
Yeah.
And then nowadays you get ones that have on like the lever is to select it like off and on. Like, wow. I remember when, and then they got the ones now where it pivots. Like before like you'll get like the ratchet wrenches where it's like a fixed curve almost, or it'll kind of have like this
It's either flat, it's got like a 45 or maybe like a 30 degree.
Yeah, like an offset.
But now you got ones that can even go full 90.
Yeah. Like it has a joint now, like, or a hinge. You're like, holy shit. And it still selects up like loosen or tighten. Like, son of a bitch. Or you get the ones that have like flashlights in on them, like screwdrivers that have flashlights. Like, wow, this is so
Or like
cool.
your electric drills now. When you pull the trigger, a light comes on. Like, how about that?
This is so cool. I remember for a time they used to have like mechanic gloves that have lights on the thumbs. You guys remember those?
I had a pair of them, and to be honest with you, like, because you're moving your hands around so much that the light's constantly moving everywhere. But so a headlamp is the way to go for me. Right.
But I remember when those first came out, like everybody had to have them. Like, ooh, look at these, my thumbs light up. Like, look at you, Mr. Bougie, with it. You know. I used to thought it was always like seeing the new tools come by is like Christmas on like the most mundane day of the year. Like, wow, look at that. That's fucking awesome. And they match the toolbox. Fucking cool.
I got to tell you, my favorite tool in at least my AOG road box is probably my Ford wrench. I mean, it use it to change out main wheel assemblies because it go big enough to grab onto the axle nuts. Use it on engine changes for getting the main hydro and fuel lines, and it doubles down as a hammer, as we talked about before. So that's probably my favorite tool. But I would say then after that, it's got to be the electric ratchet, man. I'll never do another engine change without it. It just saves so much time, and it saves your wrist, saves your hands, saves everything. Just 1/4-inch swivel with an extension on that electric ratchet, and then that shaved down 1/4-inch wrench I was talking about.
Yeah,
you can have an engine apart in no time.
I got to see that because I've always did things the knuckle dragger way, where you always bust your knuckles, bust your hands up, and it's like there's got to be a better way. So now that you say that, like I got to see this done. I got to do one now.
Yeah, electric rat. I got the Snap-on one. I bought it off the truck. Oh God, it's probably been 5-6 years ago, or maybe even 7. I don't know, somewhere in that time frame. But worth its weight in gold. And that's the expensive one. Some of the guys I worked with back then, they had a little Milwaukee one that was even more, a little more compact than the Snap-on one, and that thing worked wonders too. So, and it was a better financial choice, I guess the Milwaukee one would be. But yeah, I'm telling you, man, electric ratchet, way to go. So for all of you guys out there who do a lot of engine work and got to take out 1 million bolts and nuts and all that, electric ratchet all day. And if you don't have a Ford wrench, pick up one of those too.
Nice. I think for myself, like, because I did a lot of panel work, the most widely used but underappreciated was a fulcrum bar. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it kind of has like this foldy. It looks like something you can fold up, but it's like a slide bar, and it has a handle on it. You put a screw into one end to kind of anchor down where you're trying to pull panels from. Either yourself or someone else would push down on the handle where the slide bar is, and another guy will come in with a ratchet and put it where the slide is. And so like the two of you are pushing down on a screw or on a bolt, nut, what it is, that just will not come off. And so like now you're applying all this pressure to keep it in place, and you're like just prying it out with this fulcrum bar. And I'm gonna tell you, man, like there was many a times where I would just flip my wig over why the fuck do these panel screws or these panel bolts just will not fucking come off for whatever reason or another. And it's not like it's wet, it's glued in there or wet installed or anything. They're just over time, like they get seized in there because it expands, contracts, whatever.
Yeah, or the locking nuts that they use, or got a super tight grip on them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like that, they just won't come off for whatever reason. Like, what the fuck? So like then this fulcrum bar will just like magic, just like either it's gonna loosen it up or it's just gonna destroy it to the point where you got to drill it out. So
where did you get this fulcrum bar at?
So the one I got, it was from Matco. Crazy enough, Matco.
Okay.
But it started to become a common use item. So then Snap-on started giving them out to us.
Mm-hmm.
So like, where have you been all my life? Like, because it was either we either get the bolts off or get the fasteners off, or we had to drill them out because they were just so fucking like seized up or girded in there. So that was kind of like our last resort. If the fulcrum bar can't get it out, then you might as well drill it out. Or in the common meme thing is you take a blowtorch to it, like can't be tight if it's liquid.
Man, I'll tell you what, one of the guys I worked with talking about drilling out hardware, machinist drill bits.
Yeah.
I don't know what blends of metals those are, but they're like they retain their edges, their sharpness, and they're harder. Like you can drill titanium with them with no problem. They're kind of hard to find, but those of you out there, if you can find them, spend the money on them, pick them up, because they will save yourself a lot of stress and headaches when you're out working and you got to drill out some hardware and you're trying to use the same cheap, dull bits, over and over again. But if you find yourself a good set of machinist bits, I mean, like nothing. You drill out those fastener heads like a hot knife through butter. It's well worth the time and money.
Especially on titanium, man. I begin to tell you how much headaches I've had having to deal with titanium. Like they'll go through cutting wheels, they'll go through bits like it's fucking cool. Like it's like the toddler you can never satisfy. Like, okay, here's your new bit. And like, all right, thanks, and just like throws it away. Like, fuck, motherfucker.
Yeah. So if you can find yourself a good set of machinist bits, that's the way to go.
Yeah. And again, like this is like in the least ideal situation where like the job will just not bend. It's got to happen. It's going to happen because this is a revenue. This is a show or an event that's just been too long planned to cancel over something small. So here we are trying to make radios out of coconuts,
Yep.
try to Gilligan's Island this whole thing. That's probably the best way to think about it.
That's exactly what it is.
We're like on this really, really cheaply made show of Lost, and we're just trying to fucking make shit work.
Yep, that's more often than not. That's how people in the field we work in get jobs done. You just make it happen, but you just keep making it happen, I guess.
Yep.
And then as you go, you learn like, oh, well, I can actually, this tool can double as this, or this will do that, and this one you'll kind of like for my road box. I have different foam trays that I'm fitting in and out of it, and then depending on the job that I'm going to do, I can swap in and out trays with certain tools that I know I'll probably need for that specific job.
Or in some cases, right? Like no one really planned ahead that this kind of stuff was needed. Like say for support equipment, for instance, or a hangar, or stage requirements. Like we didn't know we needed that. Like sure, of course you didn't. I mean, why wouldn't you? Because there's drawings and show requirements for all this shit. But by all means, act shocked.
Yeah.
But sometimes they just don't know. Or it wasn't anticipated that it was needed, so you would have to do whatever it takes to get it done the first time. And then that turns into a learning curve where, okay, now we need to start investing into better or more rated equipment to do this exact job. And then that slowly turns the cycle into it becoming a regular thing, which is normal.
Or it's one of those where, okay, we've had to do this now a couple of times. We didn't have the right stuff, so now let's get the right stuff and make it that. But from my experience, it turns into, well, you made it happen last time. Just do whatever you did that time. Like, well, yeah, I made it work because I didn't have an option, but now we know better, right? Well, just do it again. You're like, no, it's not the point.
It's not the point. No,
like the messed up way shouldn't be the new norm,
right? That's the dark side of the spectrum. Like, well, it happened last time, so just do it again. Like, I don't know.
We're supposed to learn from our mistakes,
right? That's like Back in the Future where you had to basically be the bridge to get the time machine to work, you know? Yeah, let me just like hold these two cables and get zapped by lightning. Yeah. Let's do that again.
Yeah, I'll be the conductor. I'll just use myself.
Right. Hard no. Especially if it's anything with electricity or pressure, let's just take a step back and let's do this right, because fuck that. As Shoreline has mentioned with the male to male example, like that's the kind of shit that you just don't want to be fucking around with, especially with something has a very high expected rate of fucking you up.
Yeah, it's true that.
Yeah, just hard no. So if we have the time, let's do it. But if we don't, then at least like take the necessary precautions to get it right. And if push comes to shove, crescent hammer it is. Animal. Oh shit. Closing thoughts, MVP.
We've all had to use the tools that were wrong to make the job work. Learn from those experiences. If your employer won't get you the right tools, just do yourself a favor and invest your own money into getting yourself a good set of tools. Because at the end of the day, you're still going to be the one who has to go out there and do the work. So just do what it takes to make your life easier.
Right. Or if say said tools doesn't exist in any forum, right? That's the time when you gotta raise your hand. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and we need this. This needs to be a thing, and let's take a pause and do this right before we destroy ourselves. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do everything you can, but as safe as you can. Don't put your life on the line for that.
Right. Or in Shoreline's case, you know, like it was a oops that we had to make do, and we just couldn't take it down in time to get the show rolling. Like, take the due diligence and do the job right, so we don't have to come up with these Frankenstein fixes.
Exactly.
Yeah, please don't do that. All right, we'd like to thank our patrons for supporting us, making this episode, maintain our gear, have Shoreline Ever the happy to help produce it. Erica Lamont, Chris Hawkins, Stephanie Boatman, Jenny Dignan, Ryan Freshhour, Daniel Schubert, and Steven Shivers. Thank you guys especially, and thank all our patrons for supporting us and helping us make these episodes happen. Visit us at cancelformaintenance.com if you have any questions, topics, stories for the show, or if you'd like to come on the show, visit the site, hit us up on the contact us section, and we'll do whatever we can to get you or your ideas on the show. Visit our sponsor, rockwelltime.com. Rockwell Time makes all kinds of outdoors apparel, from safety rated sunglasses to rugged watches, and some fancy ones too. Use the code CX4MX, save 10% off your purchases. Support us on Patreon. Again, your patronage helps us maintain our gear, make more episodes, make some bonus content, and some exclusive merch items that we will be rolling out through our shop and through Patreon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.